Broncos get the preseason win. They've got some receiver depth. Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin, flashing big time. Jarrett Stidham, flourishing. But the running back competition behind the top two still looking a little muddled. We'll dive into what we learned from Broncos Cardinals here on Denver Football After Dark. Very early in the morning, the wee small hours of Sunday morning here in the Mile High City. So late it's early, but work must be done. Denver Football After Dark here, and it'll probably be about a 30-minute show, breaking down what we learned from the Broncos' second preseason game and second preseason win. It was without starters, but that didn't mean it was not interesting, or I should say without most starters. We did see Evan Engram, however briefly. Memorably, though. We did see R.J. Harvey. He had a touchdown. Did see Adam Troutman, handful of plays. Actually, we have the play count now because that's been updated in the system. And there it is. Evan Engram, 9 plays. Adam Troutman, 5 plays. R.J. Harvey, 10 plays. So now we have our arms around that here. As we look at the game book and we reflect on Broncos Cardinals. Preseason week number 2 for the Broncos. Turn that music down and dive in. What did we learn? Well, we learned the Broncos might have one of the deepest wide receiver rooms in the NFL. We didn't see Cortland Sutton, Devon Vele, or Marvin Mims Jr. tonight, and it stood to reason. Those are the 3 guys returning from last year. You know who and what they are. As we were disseminating that in the press box, as we figured out that they weren't going to be playing, it was very much that, okay, Sean Payton probably looked at what he had returning from last year and said, okay, these were basically 1, 2, 3 among returning pass catchers from last year. They don't necessarily need the work. But Troy Franklin, even though he's had a very good camp, he's still working his way up. And then Pat Bryant, obviously a rookie, and then Trent Sherfield, who's going to have a huge special teams role, it would seem. He needs some reps as well. So those were your big 3 in the first half of Saturday night's game. And Pat Bryant, I mean, what more can you say about him? 4 catches for 70 yards, and yet possibly his biggest and best play was the block that he had downfield, accounting for basically the last 24 yards of Evan Engram's 58-yard catch and run. I mean, first of all, even nice work by Troy Franklin early on that play, because if he doesn't kind of deftly make that move, if he doesn't to get out of the way, I mean, he's in position. That could have been a crackback and a penalty if he's not careful. So he gets out of the way, makes sure he's not blowing up the play. Engram takes off, and then Pat Bryant's hustling downfield and just textbook, picture perfect. The last 24 yards of that play for Evan Engram were basically Pat Bryant's. And I love the reaction that Pat had when I asked him about the block and his blocking in general, and he just got the biggest smile on his face. And that's just so cool, just the pride that he takes in blocking. And you can read more about that at denversports.com, because that was the angle I took in the quick little 650 word story that I wrote about Pat Bryant. I basically led off with the block, not the 4 catches for 70 yards leading all Broncos pass catchers in the game, followed closely by Troy Franklin with 67 on 4 receptions and, of course, the 2 touchdowns. But just the way, just that's a guy who gets it. Now you can see another layer to why the Broncos liked him so much and they were so taken in. It reminded me a little of how Rod Smith took such extreme pride in the blocking aspect of his game. That was something that he worked at. And if you'd ask Rod after a game about a block or a reception, he would really prefer to talk about the block more than the reception sometimes. He took such pride in that. And of course, he would always say that if you didn't block back then, if you didn't block for Mike Shanahan, you knew you weren't going to get on the field because you had to support the run game. And he did that very well. And in this case, for Pat Bryant, on that play, it was supporting the pass game and it was supporting Evan Engram. But the physicality that he shows there, it also translates to him as a receiving target. And he sort of mentioned that in the course of his answers that, okay, he's physical in the blocking game, but he's also willing to go across the middle, and that's where physicality comes in play as well. So, that Broncos might have gotten themselves a real steal there. And the other thing with Pat Bryant and the Broncos getting him there, one of the things that we learned after the draft, of course, is that one of the teams that was really high on him and interested in him was his hometown team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. We also know the Jaguars were interested in RJ Harvey as well. Liam Cohen, Tampa Bay's former offensive coordinator, now running the Jaguars. Liam Cohen, of course, in Tampa Bay last year was a driving force behind them getting Bucky Irving in the 4th round, who was a guy the Broncos were interested in. And we know how successful Bucky Irving was as a rookie. And, you can't cross off every item on your checklist in the draft. And I know that's something I've mentioned with how this past draft, the Broncos really weren't, they weren't able to get day 2 tight end crossed off the checklist. It was probably the one thing that they ended up missing that they would have liked to have gotten from this deep draft class. But, like the Rolling Stones said, you can't always get what you want. But Broncos got plenty. Jacksonville Jaguars this year weren't able to quite get what they wanted, and Broncos did. But I would also say this, something very interesting that Sean Payton and Liam Cohen are kind of barking up some similar trees when it comes to offensive skill players. And Payton's had a lot of success, and the early indications were from Tampa Bay last year and how Baker Mayfield did going down there and having the kind of having that season they did, and really the last 2 years reviving his career, first with Dave Canales and then Liam Cohen kind of building on that last year. So you've got 2 coaches who seem to know what they're doing with offensive skill players, and both of them were keen on Pat Bryant, and the Broncos have him. They have a good problem now because they may have 6 receivers who are going to get a jersey, and Sean Payton did mention that a few days ago. That's something that's maybe being tossed about now, and that'd be something unusual. Usually teams don't go any higher than 5, but the hand may be forced. Part of it's Trent Sherfield. Trent Sherfield has exceptional special teams value. It's part of why the Broncos brought him in. The sales pitch that he got from the Broncos, it was a Darren Rizzi, Sean Payton sales pitch. It was them working together. It was a vision from both of them for utilization of the guy wearing number 5. seeing him as a core player in that unit, but also having some offensive work, and we've seen him have some good plays in training camp on the offensive side. So, barring something unforeseen, Trent Sherfield's making this team, and Trent Sherfield's going to get a jersey on game days. So, and the structure of his contract in terms of guaranteed money and such, it's extremely unlikely that Trent Sherfield would be released, and then they would do the practice squad elevations thing, because there would be a kind of a dead money thing that comes into play and a new contract and so forth. So Trent Sherfield is pretty basically a Sharpie guy on the 53, unless the Broncos were to trade him, which I don't see happening. So Sherfield's going to almost certainly get a jersey on game days. So that's why the discussion, is something I brought up is, man, I mean, it would have really stunk for Pat Bryant to have the summer that he's had, the camp that he's had, and not get a jersey on game day, because he's been so good. What we've seen over the summer warrants him getting a jersey on game day in the regular season. But at the same time, Devon Vele deserves a jersey based on what he did last year, and he's done well. He's actually had some of his better days when it's mattered most during practices, even last week against San Francisco, of course, and he didn't play in this game. You're not taking a jersey from Marvin Mims Jr., my goodness. And Troy Franklin's had a whale of a camp. So it's okay. You have to take it from another position then. Pat Bryant can also factor on special teams as well, and so that maybe it's you're going one short at inside linebacker, perhaps. I mean, it may come from a defensive spot that he gets special teams reps from someone on the defensive side, or maybe you go one short at safety. I mean, it may be something weirdly creative like that where Pat Bryant gets a jersey from, but something that comes into play. I'd be remiss not to mention a little more about Troy Franklin, of course, and the night he had as well. But I think with Troy Franklin, his role was really crystallizing even before this game more than Pat Bryant's was. With Bryant, it seems like it really started to crystallize tonight. So that's why I think it. And you saw Pat Bryant, one of the guys pictured in the slide that opened the show. I think Pat's probably a little bit more newsworthy tonight, even though Troy Franklin had the 2 touchdowns. Pat kind of really took it to the next level, being a rookie as well. And he's got that comp to live up to that Sean Payton threw out there on draft weekend, the Michael Thomas comp. He's not done anything to disappoint so far. That says a lot for him, and I really love his enthusiasm. I love his football IQ. I enjoyed interviewing him a few weeks ago, and he seems like a delightful young man, smart, high football IQ as well. You can see why the Broncos were keen to get him in there. You see it now. I see it when I'm around him. It's like, okay, very much I'm like, okay, I get it. I get what they saw. Not just on the film, but I get what they saw in Pat Bryant, the person. Pat Bryant, the locker room presence. Pat Bryant, the guy who's in the meetings soaking everything in. Like, it clicks. It all makes sense. So Denver football after dark here on this Sunday morning. Wee small hours of the morning. Got all my work done. Got the video. You can find that here on YouTube as well, and of course on X/Twitter, and you can find it on the Denver Sports Facebook, and you can, it's always on Threads. It's linked on Blue Sky as well. I mean, I try to be a lot of places. I think it's pretty sure I put it on Instagram, or maybe not. I know it's on I know it's on TikTok. Nope, it didn't get in on Instagram yet. I forgot to do that before I left. Well, I'll do that. I'll do that before I go off to bed. So, always things to do here on my list. So, yeah, Pat Bryant. Oh, the Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Ooh, I like that comp. Do I think Pat Bryant will make the team? Heck yeah. Heck yes. I mean, he put him in Sharpie. And I have to borrow that from Seth Davis of CBS Sports. Yeah. Talking basketball when he's talking about, like, teams are in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. Yeah. Pat Bryant's in Sharpie. He's on the 53. Yeah, no question. 6:18. Yep. 6:18 in the Eastern Seaboard. So the sun's coming up back there, and I'm live. So that's why I say so late it comes all the way back around to being early. So great attitude. Best play was catching the horrible ball from Stidham's ankles. Yeah, that's the other thing. He makes quarterback look good. No wonder Jarrett Stidham was so complimentary of Pat Bryant because, he had a moment where he bailed him out. So, is it after dark or early morning? Well, I guess it depends on your perspective. This is so late, it's early. So it goes when the game ends at 10:30 or so, and then you get in the locker room, and then you're recording your stand-up. You can get back up to the press box about 11:40 or so, and then you're editing it till 12:30, 12:45, and then it goes on, and next thing you know, you're still writing about 2:00 in the morning, and then you're one of the last two people in the press box. The lights actually turned out in the press box while I was in there. That's how long I was there. Myself and Sean Keeler of the Denver Post. The lights clicked off, and we just kept on working. And then it was the signal that it was time to go, but we kept on working. So, how did our Aussie punter play, Mace? I'm sure he had a stopwatch. Oh yes. So we'll talk about Jeremy Crawshaw and his night. So, first punt was a line drive, and it actually had in terms of net and gross was what you wanted, but it was a line drive. And so you're not necessarily happy with that, and the hang time was sub 4. Then his next punt, finally we saw a Jeremy Crawshaw blast. We saw 4.91 on the hang time. The line of scrimmage was the 39, and that thing sailed 50, I believe it was 56 yards in the air before it hit the ground. He got a hold of it. It was the type of missile that we've been seeing in training camp. That was the type of punt that I've been talking about. And those of us who've been out there practice, the sort of thing we see with regularity. But the problem was there was no one down there, and so the ball hit at the 5, and it went into the end zone for a touchback. So the net was 41. So the net was okay in the end sum. 41 net is not bad, but not as good as you would have wanted. That's one where you would probably say, okay, if you take advantage of the leg strength, but maybe you're going to want him to go closer to a sideline and maybe do, maybe try for the coffin corner there when you're in that range, when you're punting from, say, your own 45 to your own 35. If you've got the cannon there, maybe try to get that thing to go out of bounds between the 15 and the 1. I think that's maybe something you start working on, because then you could really have a weapon, especially if you're going to outkick the coverage a little bit. So, thoughts on pre-scoring? Now, the fumble at the end was, that hurt him as well. You wonder if he's shown enough to where they might not be able to sneak him through to the practice squad. Is he right on the bubble? Is he somebody who could be that undrafted guy? I think he's now moved into the conversation of being the undrafted free agent who makes the 53. If there is one, he's sort of put himself in the conversation now, even though he was a late undrafted addition. He was not somebody in the first wave. He came in later. So he really did linger on the market. He was of a very low priority coming in. So you can definitely see that. I mean, he's well ahead of Caleb Lohner. It was kind of a rough night for Caleb Lohner in this game because he had multiple penalties. He did have a catch, but he's just incredibly raw at this point. I think you still want to see where he is in a year. I think the whole question is, do you feel like you can sneak him through? There was a team that did have an undrafted contract about apparently lined up with him if he had not been drafted, and that was the Colts. But that doesn't mean they're going to potentially sign him or claim him off waivers if the Broncos waive him. I mean, that's different because, I mean, if they want you as an undrafted player, that doesn't mean that they were going to give you a 53 a spot on the 53 just like that. And if they really wanted him, they would have taken him at pick 232 instead they picked the safety. So just because the Colts had interest in signing him does not mean that if you put Caleb Lohner on waivers that he wouldn't pass through just because the Colts wanted to sign him back then. So he may be at a point where like he is so raw that the Broncos could pass him through and get him on the practice squad and then marinate him for a year. That's sort of the thing that what I get from watching him is that that he's a long way off. And if you were able to keep Preseason as your rookie and as your, basically if you start with Atkins on IR and let him heal from that ankle injury and then recall him after 4 weeks, then effectively Preseason can kind of be your fourth tight end. He's your young tight end in the room. And then if you need, in this start the season, he can be relief for Atkins. And then if you need relief for anybody else who gets injured at some point, he can step in. If Lohner is your fourth tight end, that may put pressure on him to have to play at some point. And I think when you watch Lohner, you just kind of see he's not ready for that right now. Like I think he's a year off from from really being ready for actual snaps in a game that counts. That's just kind of my take on him at this point. But does that mean the Broncos take the roll of the dice on passing him through waivers, or do they decide to just keep him on the 53? I mean, these are all the things that they're going to talk about in the next 8-9 days. Like it's why I'm probably going to end up doing a show strictly on roster projection at some point because I think one of the things that we and that's something we probably learned from this game is that kind of how far he's off, how far Lohner's off in terms of this. If you're ranking the tight ends right now, he's below Preseason. Like he's probably right there at the bottom of the roster. So if you were saying, okay, it's the best 53, he's not. I mean, he may not be. Caleb Lohner right now may not be in the best 80, but that doesn't mean you don't want him around to develop. But that's just where he is today. So, Denver football after dark. That game was solid. Only bad for me was Estime did not show out. Yeah, and I think he probably needed to distinguish himself a little bit more than he did. Jaleel obviously had the big run in the big run early in the second quarter, the splash play, the 35-yarder. I'd say just to kind of give you a little inside baseball here, when we're in the press box, I mean there's a lot of there's a lot of chatter, a lot of back and forth. Talking, kind of exchanging thoughts, interpretations of things that are said, of what we're seeing, that sort of thing. And, with the general thought, the general consensus, at least in our area of the press box where the basically most of the beat reporters were, is that Jalil's going to be on the 53. Thought that even before tonight, but really that's the general consensus of those of us around the team and the reporting circles after tonight. That seemed pretty clear, and that he may have locked down one of those spots. If they keep 4 running backs on the 53, that Jalil may have locked down one of those spots tonight, which would leave one spot for somebody else potentially. And Tyler Bidet probably didn't do anything to lose it, but didn't do anything to kind of nudge out in front. Probably, I thought a solid game for Blake Watson overall, even though the numbers may not reflect that in terms of taking and getting what was there. But beyond Jalil, who I think maybe you put in the change of pace pile, to use the phrase that Sean Payton has used to describe him, change of pace. It still seems kind of muddled for who effectively RB3 is in terms of a pure RB3 who would step in for RJ Harvey or J.K. Dobbins if something happened to one of them, with Jalil kind of maintaining his change of pace role. I think it may still be muddied, and it may also come down to a discussion of which one of these guys is more likely to pass through waivers. The interesting thing with Audric Estime, even though Saturday night wasn't a good night for him, it would seem, is at his relatively young age and being drafted last year, he may have, even though it's not been necessarily a great camp for him, even though he's had some flashes and it hasn't been a camp where he's jumped out over the other running backs, he may actually not have a good chance of passing through waivers, in part because of his youth, and teams may look at that and say, well, let's make a claim on him and roll the dice because this guy has plenty of tread on his tires. Something that they may think, looking back at him and looking at their scouting reports on him from just 18 months ago. So, something to consider. Tyler Bidet might be your pure RB3 in terms of what his skill set is. But again, do they roll the dice and say, well, he's got a better chance of passing through waivers because he has been waived in 22, 23, 24, and each time he's passed through. So now we are 3 years removed from his draft class. He still has fewer than 20 regular season touches, and he has been waived at the deadline 3 consecutive years, and he's passed through waivers to the practice squad each time. So these are all the types of discussions that are going to come up as they are evaluating these players and deciding what to do. And there will be some calculated risks made when the Broncos get down to 53. It's just the question is where and with whom they make these calculated risks. It's fascinating to discuss right now, though. It's tough because we're dealing with people and we're dealing with jobs and we're dealing with life-changing circumstances for these guys. So it's worth discussing, but I believe it should always be discussed with a fair amount of compassion and empathy, because these are things that change the outcomes of lives and change the paths of lives. So, I think even, Sean kind of talked about how tough this is going to be, and, hey, you root for these guys as people, but it's very fascinating, but also a very difficult time here in the next 8-9 days, no doubt about it. So, music background. What music background? I don't have any music playing. There's no offense, but what are you talking about? Because I don't have any music on right now. I'll turn the music on. There's music. See? That's music right there. Music background. Now you hear it, and now you don't. So, no offense, 7-7. You say the music background, and I have no clue what you're talking about. So, respectfully. So someone's got to fill me in on this because you're talking about music background making it hard to listen to, and there was like no music. So can someone help me out with this? So anyhow, wonder if any of the backs says Mike Campana and any of the backs in New York are on the bubble. Donovan Edwards' name I'd look at. Incredible pass catcher. Out of the offense, he has been pretty good for the Jets. All right. Do you think, well, I mean, will they take the calculated risk on waiving him? That's the thing. I mean, here's the thing. If he's doing pretty well for the Jets, are they going to let him go? I mean, that's the first thing, right? Would they let him go? So that's the key thing. So I mean, that would be the first thing. So yeah, there isn't any background noise. Yeah, I mean, thank you. All right. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. I mean, it is 4:37 in the morning Mountain Time, so that's why I'm like, whatever. Like that was creepy, but that's why I was like, what the heck? I mean, I don't know. We liked Engram and Pat Bryant tonight. Yeah, they did. They did. Thank you. Thank you all for, by the way, reassuring me that I was not having a weird hallucination. Anyway, that actually makes me feel better here. So, Nelson listening in Richmond, Virginia, RVA. Appreciate you, man, back in the hometown. And it's 6:38 in the morning. I guess sun's coming up. So this is not after dark. It's early in the morning. So, Brandon Albert, not sure what I'm more worried about. Estime's worrisome outlook on the team, or the Rockies are 1 week from away from starting a winning streak. It has happened before. I was surprised about. Yep. Big night for them, too, coming back from 7-2 down, turning it around, overcoming a little bit of a rough start from Chase Dollander, his second start back after being down in AAA. Looked pretty good. Lunchtime. That's right. I guess over in the UK, right? That's or in Europe. Well, Europe or the UK. You got to be somewhere on the other side of the pond there, Pavel. So, yeah, so much better without that music. Yeah. Well, I played it again for like 30 seconds. I play at the start of the show, and then I turn it off for a long while, and then I play it at the end of the show. But I wasn't taught whatever. I can't. So, who has surprised you the most during camp? See, Troy Franklin wasn't necessarily surprised because he was doing well in OTAs too. So, I'd say probably the guy who surprised me the most is Eni Iwazurike. He's really made a move. And last year, I think I had him not making the 53, and he did. And they gave him the patience to kind of work his way back, even though after being out of football with the suspension in 2023, he wasn't all the way back, and it took him some time. But now the way he's flashed, he's started to look like the guy who they drafted, the guy who actually had some pass rush potential. So I'd say Iwazurike is the one who's probably surprised me the most this summer. So that's the guy who jumps out to me most on this. So, all right, Denver football after dark here on this Sunday morning, very late, very early Sunday morning, which is probably why why this is only going to be about it's over a little over a half hour now. and probably why this is going to come in for a landing here, because it is late and I do have to get some sleep at some point. So I've got, of course, my wrap on the game from the field. You can see that elsewhere on this YouTube channel and hear from Pat Bryant, because I did have where he talks about the blocking. I did ask him about it, and you can hear from him there. And you can read more about it at denversports.com. I've got more on Pat Bryant. I'll actually have some leftovers tomorrow. One of the more interesting conversations in the locker room, a few of us were in on this, Jade Barron talking about kind of where he's progressed over the course of training camp. Did not start, but came in when they went nickel alignment pretty quickly, and then got... let's take a look at the game book here. I just had this open. Hold, please. Jade Barron snaps. He had... How many in the game? There it is. 21 snaps. 43% of the snaps in the game. So, played a reasonably substantial amount in this contest. And question, William Hayes, Ellis should have a larger role this season. Well, I think they will probably rotate a little more liberally at edge rusher and on the interior defensive line than last year. So I think you'll probably see at edge a bit more of Jonah Ellis and a bit more of Dondrea Tillman than you saw last year. I think they're going to keep Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper a bit fresher. Frankly, both Ellis and Dondrea Tillman have earned more reps and have earned more trust. And even though, I mean, they're reserves for a reason, and Benito and Coop are starters for a reason, but when you've got two players of a certain quality, then if you get them out there for, say, 35% of the snaps, their 35% with their fresh legs can end up equaling in quality what you get for the other 65% from your starters. And I think it's got the potential to work very much like it did in 2015 when you had Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware starting when D. Ware was healthy, and then you had Shane Ray and Shaq Barrett coming in and backing up. That I think you could have something similar in terms of the dynamic at edge with Coop and Benito on the top line, and then Tillman and Ellis on the second line, and then even a sprinkling of Q Robinson if he's active there for a special teams role as well. And then if he is, sprinkle him in there for some reps as well, because he's had a strong camp too. 89 is a keeper. Courtney Jackson. Okay. It's going to be an interesting decision on Courtney Jackson, because effectively he is your number 2 returner. But does that mean he's on your 53, or is he somebody you try to slip through and then he's on your practice squad? But then if Marvin Mims Jr. is injured, you elevate him and he fills in for a game or 2 games or 3 games. Courtney Jackson's probably right on the bubble. He, of the undrafted rookie receivers, because there's a role for him as a returner and because he's kind of taken that by the horns, he probably has the best chance of those undrafted rookies of making the 53, because he can be effectively your number 2 returner. And if you want to give Marvin Mims Jr. more reps on offense and give him a little bit of relief on returns, Jackson does offer that option if you need that. And he's a very natural returner. That was one of the things that popped at Arkansas State. Very natural, very fluid, reads the field well in that phase. And I think that's something that has a chance to keep him around. So, just got off work for entertainment for the drive home, man. Appreciate you, Ignacio, for watching this and for letting me keep you company on your drive home. So, Davis Webb, stock up. Oh, yeah. There's an interesting conversation to be had about Davis Webb long term here, and I like Sean Payton giving him the play calling Saturday night. Davis Webb's doing so well as a quarterbacks coach and now assistant head coach as well. They threw that title on for him. I don't think it's crazy to think that he may make the same kind of leap that Andy Reid made back in 1999. Andy Reid was a quarterbacks coach with the Green Bay Packers, not only coaching Brett Favre, but Green Bay had this habit of always adding young quarterbacks to the room and then trading them for more than the initial investment and them becoming starters. I mean, they had Mark Brunell, who became a starter in Jacksonville, and they had Matt Hasselbeck eventually became a starter in Seattle. And they even had Ty Detmer came through there, and he started a playoff game in Philadelphia. And they briefly had Kurt Warner in training camp, but he didn't last very long. But Ron Wolf, their general manager at the time, and of course eventually became a Hall of Famer, Ron Wolf believed that you always look at quarterbacks, even if you got a guy like Brett Favre, who became a Hall of Famer, and you had an established guy, that you still always looked at quarterbacks in the late rounds. You never stopped scouting quarterbacks. So they always kept looking at quarterbacks and brought them in. Aaron Brooks, a guy who eventually started in New Orleans, was a guy that came through Green Bay as well, out of that philosophy. And so Andy Reid was coaching all these guys as well as coaching Brett Favre. And Reid made that leap from QB coach, position coach, to head coach in Philadelphia. And Davis Webb may have that same capability of doing that. At minimum, Davis Webb ought to be calling plays for somebody. And of course, with Sean Payton, it almost certainly isn't going to happen here as long as Sean Payton's the head coach, which is why it would be an upset if Davis Webb is here much longer, because there's going to be a bigger opportunity in play for him at some point. There just is. But it was cool to see him get that opportunity. But Matt Flynn. Matt Flynn was later. Matt Flynn is when you got to like 2011, 2012. And that was well after Andy Reid had gone. But the same concept. And actually there's a DNA, there's a common thread DNA for the Packers going through Ron Wolf and then to the late Ted Thompson and now to Brian Gutekunst. Like, the Packers are still doing a lot of things philosophically that kind of date back to the 90s. They've evolved and kept up with the times, but it's an organization from a football operations perspective that really they haven't had huge pivots. They've evolved. Some of that comes with being as successful as they have over the decades. I mean, they've had some shaky seasons, but they've had only like one, maybe two. They've had one real meltdown season, and they've had a couple of shaky seasons in there, but they haven't really had a lot of woes, and because of that, they've stayed the course. And one of the reasons why is not just the quarterbacks, but they've drafted really well, so they haven't had a reason to change their philosophy. And Andy Reid, as a coach, came out of that. And so now we see Sean Payton, his tree is starting to bear a lot of fruit. I mean, Dan Campbell's one of his guys. We'll see how Aaron Glenn does with the New York Jets. I mean, it's early, and it's the Jets. And so you're kind of wary of a team that has ownership issues that they do, but in terms of owners that just can't seem to figure it out. But Aaron Glenn, Darren Muji, I mean, we'll see. Those are people who know what they're doing. They're well trained. Aaron Glenn worked under Sean Payton, worked under Dan Campbell. I mean, he's got the coaching pedigree. He's smart. Darren Muji worked under George Payton. He was even here under John Elway. I mean, he knows what he's doing. So we'll see. Anyway, appreciate you, Scott. Good morning to you as well. I rewound the video of the beginning. I just heard the music. I thought I was going to play the whole time. Thank you, 77. Thank you. I appreciate that because I thought I was, like I said, I thought I was hallucinating. George growing a tree too. Yep, he is. He absolutely is. Dulcich flashed in New York today. You think there are guys who have more soft tissue injuries because of the elevation? It was a hypothesis that certainly came up, but the fact that you've seen fewer soft tissue injuries since Sean Payton came in, maybe otherwise. Now, Greg Dulcich's issues, at least the hamstring, those did continue with Payton in 2023, carried over from 22 to 23. So it's something that has come up and it has been discussed that soft tissue injuries do happen more here. But the fact that the Broncos have had fewer of them the last couple of years maybe works against that. Maybe the Broncos have figured out something. But it's only 2 years of sample size. Let's see what happens going forward. I mean, now you have Dre Greenlaw, who had a quad issue in April, and now he's got a quad issue right at this point, although seems like all signs are pointing to him being back next week. A very good sign, by the way, in early pregame warmups. He wasn't in uniform, but Dre Greenlaw was doing full speed sprints about 2 hours before kickoff. So I would say that's an excellent sign for him. So for him in terms of how he's coming along. Nick Gargiulo got hurt. Yep, knee injury. And I don't want to speculate on the severity, but it looked bad when seeing it initially. And the cart came out quickly, and the team as a whole came from the bench to support Gargiulo as he was being treated and then as the cart left the field. So those are all signs that probably indicate the severity of the injury. But again, don't want to speculate. Just going to share what we saw. And if you were watching the game, you saw all of that. So next guy up, if he's not there, I mean, you may end up seeing that spot go to another position if Gargiulo's out for. If it's a season-ending injury for Gargiulo, I mean, maybe that's Clay Webb on the 53 or Will Sherman, perhaps. I mean, Will Sherman actually started, and he's been around for a while. They bumped him inside, and he started. Could also mean that they just decide to get that extra interior spot from the practice squad, and they go heavy at another position. Again, this is where it's, okay, which guys can we slip through the practice squad and which ones do we have to keep on the 53? That's part of the game that gets played here as well. So anyway, that's all these things to consider. So Sutton, Mims, Franklin, Bailey, Bryant, Sherfield. You think Jackson will make it through waivers? One thing about wide receivers at the roster deadline is that a lot of them tend to slip through because most teams have an undrafted wide receiver that they like. And because of that, you usually see them slip through because they look at the players on the wire and they say, well, we've got this guy that we really actually would prefer to have that's in our building and has been working with our quarterbacks. Again, because college football does a pretty good job of producing wide receivers, and it does translate. It's not like tackle. It's not like QB. Wide receiver does offer a little bit more of a translation and a projection. So, anyway, that's one of the reasons why I think Jackson probably has a better chance to make it through, even though he has a returner skill set. So, Dre Greenlaw about 5 games. Well, that would be That'd be not too bad because considering how little he played last year, that'd be fair if he played 12 games. Unless you're saying he misses and he only plays 5 games, that would be rough. I'd like to see him play in 12 to 14 games, Dragunwa. So, my turn to go to work, Scott. Well, you have a good work day, and I think everyone else who's going to work, if you're going to work on this Sunday, you have a good work day as well, because I can feel my eyes shutting here at 4:56 in the a.m. in the Mile High City. So this is probably my cue to exit here for the night for Denver Football After Dark. Well, not sure if I'll do a show on Sunday night. I will probably do something on the roster at some point. It may not be live. I don't know how I'm going to attack this just yet. So again, test kitchen, thinking through things, what I'm going to do. Maybe something I write, maybe something I pre-produce. Just I'm going to think about this on Sunday, probably when I'm sitting at Coors Field at the Rockies game as they try to get a 3 out of 4 series win over the Arizona Diamondbacks. So anyway, number 1 returner is Marvin Mims Jr. Yep, because he is an all-pro and he's electric, and you want to get him the ball in that phase as often as you can, and he's a game breaker. So yeah, you definitely, that Marvin Mims Jr. is there. And if anything, you want to find more ways to get Marvin Mims Jr. the ball. And I do actually think that they've, in practice, while our eyes in the media are on practice, I think they've been holding some things back on Mims that they'll probably work on once we're not there. So that's again, my hypothesis on that. I think they're cooking up some things for Mims that we really won't see until week 1, and frankly, I'm fixing to find out what those are, and I'm excited about them. Appreciate you, 77. Sorry about the music thing. just threw me off here in the middle of the night. So appreciate you, Ignacio, for watching. Appreciate all of you for watching this, especially at this crazy hour. Although it's not so crazy if you're on the East Coast. I like I mentioned, I loved hearing from the hometown of RVA, and wherever you are, East Coast, West Coast, somewhere in between, somewhere on the other side of the ocean, somewhere on the other side of the planet. Thank you for watching this edition of Denver Football After Dark, the post-game edition following preseason game number 2. Broncos 27, Arizona Cardinals 7. Broncos clinch a winning preseason, even though that is probably not worth all that much. But hey, it's a couple of wins. Feel good for the night. On to New Orleans next Saturday, but there's 3 days of practice coming up this week. And why is my thing beeping? Who on earth is texting me at 4:59 Mountain Time? What in the world? I'll get on that. Anyway, appreciate you joining me on this edition of Denver Football After Dark. Very, very early on a Sunday morning. Plenty more to come at denversports.com. I'll have some written content there. Of course, Cecil Lammy and I will have you covered on Orange and Blue today, 5 p.m. Mountain Time on Monday. And then Broncos are back at practice on Tuesday. It's not technically training camp in terms of public tickets available for fans, but it practically is training camp. There will be some people in the stands because it's sponsors and so forth. So we'll have all that covered for you at denversports.com and on Orange and Blue today as we go through the final week of the preseason heading into next Saturday's game in New Orleans. So take care. Thanks for watching. Appreciate all of you being here, whether you watched live or on delay. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Yes, hit that like button if you enjoyed this, and if you think you know people who'd enjoy this kind of Broncos content, tell your friends about what I've got cooking up here in my little test kitchen corner of YouTube. So, and yes, victory lap, I will stay saucy, as I like to do so. So, this is Denver Football After Dark for a Sunday morning. Bright and early, sun's going to come up, but I'm going to go to bed for about 6 hours here. So, take care. Thanks for watching, and have yourself a great Sunday wherever you are. Bye-bye.